seems to be having a good time, and welcome to our breakfast, Drache breakfast. This is actually the first time we've done a client appreciation breakfast, and we are all thrilled with the turnout and very, very happy that you could all make it. It's not often we get a chance to speak and socialize in a social environment with people that we help, and we do enjoy helping you. And we thought this might be a nice way to show that we enjoy your patronage and work with you to advance your causes. It's one of the things about Drache that I think we're all very proud of. I think it goes without saying that we know the law, we know what we're talking about. I won't go too deeply into that. I think the fact that you folks trust us with your very important matters shows that you have faith in our understanding and experience of the law. But I think what sets us apart is that we really care. We really care. You folks do tremendous work, and it's one of the incredible advantages of working with charities is that we get to help, and we like to help, and we get to go home and feel some small sense of satisfaction that we're involved in your important work, and we wanted to thank you for that, because really that is very meaningful to us, and we look forward to continuing that relationship with you and seeing your continued success. We have three of our senior lawyers are going to give you a presentation today. The idea was that things happen in law, or some things kind of aren't discussed. You come to us with specific questions, and sometimes it's hard to sort of get out of that lane that we're thinking in and think a little bit more broadly about other issues that may affect you and affect all of us. And we thought it might be a wise idea to sit down, just bring a couple of them to your attention, things that maybe otherwise we wouldn't have the opportunity to learn about, and may get us into trouble at some point. I'm going to be speaking about a topic that seems to pop up with unbelievable regularity in different contexts, and that is dealing with non-residents that you bring into Canada to help out with the project in one way or the other. Sylvie Lalonde will be speaking about your bylaws, and Karen Cooper will be speaking about how to run a better annual general meeting, which of course we all need to do. We have a set running time, but we understand that everybody has, after breakfast, has real things to do with their life and not sit and schmooze with us. So we're going to move along, and we'll be available afterward to answer any questions you have, or just to chat. And with that, I'll turn it over to Pencil.
So today I am going to speak about bylaws and why they're important, and I am fully aware that it's not the most exciting topic in the world, but I do think it's important because in our day-to-day practices we do often get calls and questions from clients with respect to their bylaws, and nobody likes to talk about bylaws because it's a boring document and it talks about rules, and nobody likes to talk about that. And oftentimes the document is shelved, and we don't really pay a lot of attention to it until something goes wrong within your organization, either a governance issue or procedural matter. And then the first place we need to turn to are the bylaws, and then we discover that, oh, these are out of date, or they don't address the particular problem or issue that we're dealing with, or they're just a mess. And then when you have the problem, it's not the best time to try and fix and amend your bylaw. And so I thought it might be a good topic to address and to see if we can give you some tips on how to improve your bylaws and make sure that you don't get into trouble when you need to consult them. And this is just a basic overview of the presentation. So what are bylaws? Well, the general operating bylaw sets out the fundamental governing rules of the organization. So it's the framework within which your board operates, your members operate, and how your officers are also part of the overall governance process. The bylaws are important because they actually create a contractual relationship between the corporation and the directors and the corporation and the members. So they create legally binding obligations with respect to the individuals who are subject to it. So they really are important, and it's important to abide by them. The bylaws do provide a set of rules and establish sort of they are a source of corporate authority, but they're not the only source of corporate authority. So it's important to understand where the bylaws fall within different levels of sources of corporate authority. And of course, the ultimate authority for the governance of the internal affairs of the organization is the incorporating statute. So for many organizations, that will be the Canada Non-for-Profit Corporations Act, or if you're incorporated provincially, perhaps it's the Ontario Corporations Act, which will soon be replaced by the Ontario Non-for-Profit Corporations Act. Or we hope that that will be happening soon, but we're not sure. So that is really the ultimate governing authority. Some organizations are also incorporated by special statute, for example, the University of Ottawa. And so that would be the ultimate governing authority. Then, if you're an organization that operates in a particular sector or industry, so for example, a hospital, a long-term care home, you will also be subject to other legislation such as the Public Hospitals Act or the Long-Term Care Homes Act, or if you're a daycare, perhaps it's the Child Care and Early Years Act. So that also is top of mind for corporate authority. And then after that, you have the Articles of Incorporation, and then you have the bylaws. And then after that, you have board resolutions and policies. So it's kind of like a funnel. At the very top, you have the legislation that is it has broader scope, and then as you go down through these documents, board resolutions and policies become more granular. So it's important to understand that those levels of authority, because everything that falls below has to comply with the other level above it. And so it's important to understand. It's also important to know, and this may sound like a funny comment, but which corporate statute actually applies to you. It always amazes me when I get a call from a new client and they need help with their governance or their bylaws. And the first question I will ask is, well, under what statute are you incorporated? Well, they don't know. But it's important to know because the rules differ from statute to statute. So if there's any doubt, then that should be clarified. So when we're drafting bylaws, how do we go about it? There are sort of two approaches to drafting bylaws. You can either have a minimalist approach or you can have a very comprehensive approach. You can have a very, very simple bylaw that's user-friendly, that doesn't that's not too lengthy, that doesn't prescribe for every eventuality. Or you can have a very comprehensive bylaw to try to avoid having to consult the legislation each time you have a problem. And which approach you will take will largely depend on, well, firstly, the governing legislation. For those of you who are federally incorporated, you'll recall that under the former legislation, the Canada Corporations Act, there were very strict rules with respect to how profits are governed. And so we had to rely on Industry Canada policy because they approved the bylaws, which thankfully they don't do anymore. So organizations tended to have very comprehensive bylaws with lots of rules because we had to. Now, thankfully, under the Canada Non-for-Profit Corporations Act, there is a comprehensive set of rules and default provisions for pretty much any governance issue that you might run into, which may or may not be even by your bylaws. The size of your organization may also have be a factor in deciding whether or not which approach you want to take, the sophistication of your organization, etc. We find that what typically works really well for organizations is a compromise between a minimalist bylaw and a comprehensive one. So one that's fairly comprehensive but still user-friendly makes references to those key provisions of the Act. And in fact, under the Canada Non-for-Profit Corporations Act, really, you could have a bylaw that only has two provisions. There are only two things that need to be in there. One is you have to have notice to members, and the second thing is you have to have what are the conditions for membership. But otherwise, you could technically have just a bylaw. All right, so let's talk about how we can improve bylaws, or what are some of the tips to make sure that they're flexible. In my opinion, it's important to have a bylaw that's flexible because the way that your organization operates today may not be the way that it will function in years to come. So if you can build flexibility into the bylaws, it will avoid having to go back to your members and your board to amend your bylaws each time you want to change something. So some tips for doing that is leave the details of your bylaws in board policies. So for example, don't put detailed membership criteria in your bylaws. Or if you have if you charge dues for your members, and there's a process for establishing dues, and there's a process if members don't pay dues, and there's a deadline for dues, leave all of that out of your bylaws and put it instead in the board policy. Director nominations and elections process. Again, better off putting that in the policy. Conflict of interest rules. Most organizations have or should have a conflict of interest policy that applies to their board of directors. There are some statutory provisions in the legislation, but they're fairly minimal and they tend to apply mostly to interests that are financial or that relate to material transactions of the corporation. So it's good to have a separate conflict of interest policy and simply make reference to them in the bylaws. And finally, there's no need to put detailed provisions in the bylaws about your committees and your terms of reference. You may have some key standing committees like your executive committee or audit or governance committee, and it's okay perhaps to make reference to them, but leave the details about how they're appointed, their composition, their mandate, and all of that. Best to leave that out in board policies, because board policies are easier to amend. You'll give them the authority of the board. You don't have to do your members to have those policies amended, whereas bylaws, as we know, require both board and member. There will be time for questions at the end of the presentation, but if there are any questions along the way that you feel you prefer to ask as we go along, please feel free to do so. All right. Second tip, include only if bylaws allow clause. That's my term, not a real term. And it's a bit of a mouthful, but the point is that there are some provisions in the legislation or some actions that can only be taken by an organization if the bylaws so allow. So for example, under the CNCA, federal act, proxy voting and other forms of absentee voting are not allowed unless your bylaws specifically say that they are. So if you want your members to have the right to vote by proxy, for example, then you have to have a clause in your bylaws that allows for that. Similarly, under the federal legislation, the rule is that only members are allowed to elect directors under that act. That's the general rule, the basic rule. Members must elect their directors at the AGM. There is an exception, however, to that rule. Directors may appoint a limited number of additional directors for a term of no more than 1 year, provided that your articles, your bylaws, provided that your articles include that language. And so it's a neat tool for some organizations to have, particularly if an issue arises during the year and you want to bring on a director with particular expertise without having to go back to your members. If you can avail yourself of this option, it may be very useful, but remember that that clause has to be in your articles, and if it's in your articles, my recommendation is to also include it in your bylaws so that you're aware. However, there's a limit on the number of those directors that can be appointed by the board, and the rule is you can't appoint no more than 1/3 of the number of directors that were elected at your last AGM. So if at your last AGM only 3 directors were elected, even though you may have a board of 10, 12, that means the board can only appoint one. So I don't want to get into the weeds about that whole rule, but the point is that there are certain actions that can only be taken if that language is present either in the articles or the bylaws. Similarly, under the Ontario Corporations Act, there are clauses like that. If you're an Ontario corporation and you want to have an executive committee, you can only have one if your board has more than 6 directors and only if your bylaws allow for an executive. Another example is meetings of members and the board for Ontario corporations must be held at your head office unless your bylaws provide otherwise. So it's important to be aware of these restrictions or some of these clauses in the legislation that may be restrictive. And if they don't work well for your organization, then to ensure that you have appropriate language in your bylaws so that you can have a more flexible approach. Include a range for the number of directors. Some of you may say, well, under the new legislation, that's done automatically now the articles of incorporation. You can provide for a minimum and maximum number of directors, and that's true under the new legislation. However, for Ontario corporations, the legislation provides that the number must be fixed. So the board shall consist of a fixed number of directors. So if you're an Ontario corporation, your number has to be fixed, so your bylaws have to specify the board shall be comprised of 8 directors, or whatever number it may be. And then a special resolution is then required to increase or decrease that number of directors. If you do have a range in your articles, then a board or a member resolution is required to fix the number of directors depending on who has been given authority to do that. But an important point that I wanted to make is that some organizations tend to not understand this. If you have a fixed number of directors, let's say the range is 3 to 9, and you fix it at 6 by resolution, that number does not automatically fluctuate when you have directors who resign from your board. So the number was fixed at 6 at some point, perhaps upon incorporation. And then you have 2 vacancies. So now you currently have 4 board members sitting on your board. Well, your number is not fixed at 4. Your number is still fixed at 6, but you have 2 vacancies. So that may be important for purposes of quorum, and I'm going to come back to that a little bit later on. But the key point here to retain is that that number doesn't automatically fluctuate. You need a board resolution if you want to efficiently reduce or increase the number of members. Allow the board to change your financial year end. We sometimes see in bylaws the financial year end of the corporation shall be December 1st. We'd like to include additional language that says that unless otherwise changed by the board, the year end shall be. That way, if you want to change your financial year end, you don't have to go back to your members and then the bylaw to do so. The board can simply do it by resolution. Don't include an exhaustive list of officers in your bylaws. Again, for more flexibility, rather than have your bylaws say the officers shall include the chair, the secretary, treasurer, why not have more inclusive language or permissive language that says that the board shall or may include those officers and such other officers as the board may appoint from time to time. That way, if you want to change the structure of your officers, not a problem. You can do it by board resolution again without amending your bylaws. I'm going to talk a little bit about bylaw provisions that have to do with voting and meetings of members and directors. I wanted to just briefly mention notice periods for meetings. The legislation does prescribe what are the minimum notice requirements for members meeting, both federally and provincially. Federally, minimum number of days, I believe, is 21 days, and for Ontario, it's 10 days. In my opinion, it's best to stick to those minimum notice periods required by legislation to provide you with the most flexibility in case you need to quickly convene a meeting of members. If you go longer and you need to convene your meeting quickly, then you really need to comply with that notice period, and it can delay things if you're waiting for member approval on something. For board meetings, there is no statutory rule. You can fix it in your bylaws, pretty much whatever you like, but again, my recommendation is to keep that notice period short so that if the board needs to meet urgently, 24 hours, for example, 48 hours, are good suggestions. That way you can keep them moving. We often see problems with quorums that are fixed too high. So fix your quorum at levels that are achievable, particularly for member meetings. And particularly if you have a very large membership and you have trouble getting people to come to your AGM. There's no requirement that your quorum for members has to be a majority of members. If you have 500 members, getting 250 people out to an AGM might be a challenge. So keep it lower and reasonable, and it may actually simplify getting people to your meeting. In the bylaws, when we describe what does being present mean for the purposes of quorum, make sure that the bylaws say that presence also includes being present in person, by electronic means, or by proxy for members. Because if that language isn't in there, then it's ambiguous as to whether or not participating remotely or by proxy, whether or not that counts for purposes of quorum. When you're establishing quorum for the board, we like to include language in the bylaws that says that quorum is based on the number of directors in office as opposed to the number of directors. And it goes back to the issue that I raised earlier about how you fix that number. So if you have a fixed number on the board and you have some vacancies on there, and your quorum provision says the quorum is a majority of the board, and you have to calculate that majority based on the total number of directors, so that fixed number as opposed to the number of directors in office, which can be a challenge when you're establishing the quorum. So include language in your bylaws that says that quorum is based on the number of directors who are in office. Absentee voting. Talked a little bit about it a few minutes ago, that for federally incorporated not-for-profits, that absentee voting is only allowed if it's in the bylaws. Make sure that those provisions are clear in terms of how they participate remotely or by electronic means. For board meetings, proxy voting is not allowed. This is a long-standing rule, originally established by common law. Now it is specifically included in the legislation. But I think it's worthwhile to include a clause in the bylaws that repeats the language of the Act. No person shall act for an absent director at a meeting of directors. Attending board meetings and participating at meetings is a fiduciary duty that cannot be delegated. So proxies are not allowed for directors. And it's a great reminder to include that in the bylaws so that everyone's aware of that rule. Include a tie-breaking clause in your bylaws for meetings of members and directors. The practice for a long time was that in case of inequality of votes, that the chair would have, in addition to an original vote, a second or casting vote. There seems to be a trend now moving away from that language in favor of a clause that provides that in the event of a tie or inequality of votes, the chair shall not have a second or casting vote, but rather the motion will be defeated. And there's good reason for that. If you're not able to get over 50% buy-in on a particular motion or resolution, then maybe it shouldn't be passing. But regardless of which approach that you take, it's a good idea to include that in your bylaws so that the rule is clear. There are new provisions in the Canada Not-for-Profit Corporations Act and the soon-to-be enacted ONCA, the Ontario equivalent, that said that a director who is present at a meeting is deemed to have consented to any resolution taken at the meeting unless he or she communicates otherwise. Similarly, a director who is absent from a meeting of the board is deemed to have consented to that resolution unless within 7 days after becoming aware of that resolution, the director expressly communicates his or her dissent. These are new rules in the legislation, and they're important for directors to know that that is the rule in the event that any decisions are taken with which they do not agree. And so I think because these provisions are new, it's a good idea to reproduce them in your bylaws just so that they're brought to the attention of the board and the people know that those rules exist. The final thing I wanted to talk about was why it's important to include rules in your bylaws about how directors and members are terminated. Because as I mentioned earlier, when things go wrong, and often things do go wrong when people want to get rid of a problematic director or a disruptive member, the first place you turn to are your bylaws. So make sure that there are clear provisions in your bylaws that set out the grounds on which members and directors can be terminated, so that it's clear. Indicate who has the right to terminate members and directors. Now, for members, for termination of directors, the legislation is clear. That right belongs to the members. There's an exception in the new Ontario Not-for-Profit Corporations Act that says that members can't remove ex officio directors. But otherwise, members have the right to terminate directors by ordinary resolution under the federal legislation and this new Ontario Act. For Ontario corporations presently, members can remove directors by a special resolution. For removal of members, the legislation essentially says that members may be removed in accordance with the provisions of the bylaws. So again, it's important to have a clear process in your bylaws that sets out how members can be terminated, whether they're terminated by the board or by the members. It's up to the organization. But under the new corporate statutes, the bylaws have to set out the circumstances and the manner in which the power to terminate or discipline members may be exercised. And so how do you do that? Well, essentially you need to make sure that the provisions, the termination provisions, ensure procedural fairness. And that means that the member is entitled to receive reasonable notice of termination, which includes the reasons for the proposed termination. So we need to send a letter to the member in advance and saying, we intend to terminate your membership, and here's the reason why. The member must be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard or to provide written submissions in response to that letter. So we need to hear his or her side of the story. What does he or she have to say about why he or she should not be terminated? And if the member exercises his or her right to be heard or to submit reasons or submissions, then the board or the members, depending on who has the authority to terminate, must consider those submissions before rendering their final decision. So that's essentially the key things that your bylaws need to address. For director terminations, just make sure that the bylaws also include language with respect to how a terminated director can be replaced, whether it be at the members' meeting at which the director was removed, so the members can then find a replacement for that director, or if there are other ways in which the organization wishes to do that, to include that in the bylaws. So in conclusion, a few final remarks. Use your bylaws. Look at them. If you haven't looked at them in a while, go around, take a look, make sure they're drafted and consistent with whatever legislation you are incorporated under. Review them regularly, because as the organization evolves, things change, perhaps your board structure needs to be tweaked. Perhaps you still have over language with respect to quorum or with respect to tie-breaking votes. Don't make your bylaws too difficult to amend. The legislation provides the basic default rule for the approvals that are required for amending bylaws. Some organizations go over and beyond that. I've seen bylaw provisions where 60, 90 days notice must be given of a proposed bylaw provision. A bylaw can only be amended if 10% of the members agree, or if they sign a requisition, it becomes very complicated and cumbersome. Make it as simple as possible, in my opinion. And finally, consult a professional. It doesn't have to be me. Consult a professional. I prefer it to be me. It doesn't have to be me. We often see organizations, they come to us and they say, here are bylaws. It's obvious they took an example from their friend who's an executive director at another organization. They've taken their bylaws. It was crafted for completely different legislation, and sometimes it's just a mess. So just be mindful of that and get the help that you need so that you avoid problems down the road. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
You said before that proxy voting is not allowed at board meetings by directors. So does that mean that at an annual general meeting, the director cannot have proxy vote as well? Or
So if the director is also a member and is participating at a members meeting,
yeah.
the director can, if the bylaws allow proxy voting. Yeah, it's only if they're wearing their hat as a director at a director's meeting. Can be.
I have a question about meeting electronically. Are there any sort of, as technology improves and maybe changes, what is coming sort of down the pipe as far as meeting using electronic means? Or what are some bylaws provisions that we should already start thinking about using flexible language for when we have 3D virtual meetings?
Yeah, that's a good question. So currently, under the Federal Nonprofit Corporations Act, electronic meetings are allowed both for members and for directors. And typically, we include a clause in the bylaws that simply says that electronic meetings are permitted, either by telephone or by other electronic means. And then it's usually up to the organization to decide which means works best for them, whether it be by webinar or a teleconference. There are all kinds of new tools available, web tools that you can use as well. So as long as it's allowed in your bylaws and that it's made available to everyone who's entitled to participate in the meeting, and that allows everybody to communicate adequately with each other, then it's generally permissible. For Ontario corporations, and I'm looking at Karen, I think that under the Ontario Corporations Act currently, I don't think members are allowed to meet electronically, so that's a problem. That will be changing under the new
That
legislation.
means directors can.
Directors can, if it's permitted by the bylaws, but members cannot yet in Ontario, if you're an Ontario corporation.
One of the interesting things is that member votes actually, voting electronically is, I believe under the CNCA, you can't know who cast which vote. And so the platform that you use actually has to anonymize the vote, yet verify that the person voting is, in fact, a qualified member. So if you get into voting, then things become a little more complicated. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's why it's important to, if you're going to do these meetings electronically, there are all kinds of services now that can set that up for you and make sure that those mechanisms are in place so that anonymous voting can be done, but also subsequently verified. Any other questions?
Yeah, you mentioned the 7-day rule for the dissenting director to the resolution. If the minutes of the director's meeting record that dissent, you still have to register your dissent after.
No. As long as it's done either at the meeting, well, if you're at the meeting, but what this says is that if you're not at the meeting, then you have an obligation to make sure that it's either reflected in the minutes or otherwise recorded in the records of the corporation. As soon as you become aware of it. Yes?
So you register your dissent. So when you leave the board meetings, that's just within the board. You don't carry that outside the board meeting, right? You need to talk. You need to represent that decision that was made, and you need to be in favor of it.
Right, that's a good point. So as part of your duties as directors, there's a duty of solidarity, if you will. So it's entirely appropriate and encouraged to express your dissent at a board meeting, and if you want to record it in the minutes, you should do that. But once the decision is made as a board, when you're out in the public and if you're discussing that decision, then it's important to present a unified front. And it's not the appropriate time to say, well, I didn't agree with that decision. That should be kept within the walls of the board. That's a good point. Yes.
Is there any timeline on the OMCA consultation, I guess?
Is there any timeline on the proclamation of the ONCA? I don't know. We've been hearing that there's some activity going on internally at the government, and perhaps by the end of the year, but we've heard that before, haven't we? So I wish I had an answer for you, but we don't know. Any other questions? No? Thank you.
So I am going to speak about a topic that is often ignored, but I think it's important to recognize as a general rule that charities are subject to the same laws as everybody else. Charities as a sort of subsector have a layer of laws that apply specifically to them, but so do mining and gas, mining and oil, and so does the financial services sector. So similarly, the laws that we often deal with are those that are typical to charities and nonprofits. But of course, we have to remember that there's a whole set of laws that applies to everyone. And, labor and employment is a good one. Tax is one of those that we often are unsure of because it's a little Swiss cheese. Charities, of course, being and nonprofits being tax exempt, we often ignore many of the other rules that we have to consider when looking at the Income Tax Act and its application to charities. So one of the things I wanted to do today is to discuss one of those sets of rules that often flies beneath the radar. And it's relevant because, sorry, I have to figure out how to use this thing. So I've got just the bottom left here. All right, well, I think something that works. Okay. Why is this important? Why do we have to worry about these situations when we bring in foreign individuals to help us with our mission? And the truth is that this happens actually in a variety of circles. We don't even think about it. We've dealt with it in the context of churches that bring in guest pastors. We've dealt with it in the context of development agencies that bring in experts on water sanitation from Germany to Canada to help them design a project. There are organizations that bring in Americans to provide guidance or motivational speaking, will be the keynote address at their annual dinner. And oftentimes these rules are just difficult to, first of all, they're difficult to implement because oftentimes the foreign speaker says, any meeting you're going to, you keeping 15% of my income, which is the rule, as we'll see. But more than that, it often flies under the radar because after you've done planning this entire event and you found your speaker, you got everything said, it's just one of those rules that are hard to remember. So one of the things we want to do today is just go over this. Mostly, and because it's important, but it's also important to remember that this is just an example of the fact that there are many rules that we have to keep in mind that are part of laws that apply to everybody equally. And those bigger organizations that have in-house counsel, in-house accounting help, we may be more familiar with this rule than others, but the fact is that there's a variety of rules that we need to keep in mind. So, stand over here. Hear me? Let's see. With this. So when is this, I just try to structure this in terms of asking questions, the 5 W's and the 6th W being withholding. But when do we need to worry about this? Well, we need to worry about this when we've got somebody coming in who's a non-resident of Canada. They are providing a service to you. So as opposed to, let's say, paying royalty fees for the use of intellectual property, a logo or something to somebody in the United States, as happens often when you have a branch organization of a large international group. In this case, we're talking about somebody coming here and doing something for you. And obviously, we're talking about the service we provided in Canada. So the person is not sitting in their office in Germany or Kenya or something doing this work. They're actually getting on a plane, coming here, and helping you out. And of course, the amount being paid is a fee or commission as opposed to any other amounts. Now, this is an interesting question. What is a non-resident? And the reason this comes up, of course, is because usually the issue is the fact that Canada taxes on the basis of residency as opposed to the basis of citizenship, which the Americans do. So often we ask this question of ourselves: are we resident here? I spent half a year in Florida. I wish I spent half a year in Florida, but some people do, and do they give up their residency and whatnot? And there's all sorts of indicia of residency, and it really relates to the residential ties that the individual has there. As somebody that lives in Uganda and has their family in Uganda, and their bank accounts in Uganda, and owns a house and a car in Uganda, and is resident of Uganda, it becomes a bigger issue when somebody spends 4 months in Monaco and 3 months in Germany and 6 months in Canada and 2 months in Japan. I think that adds up to 12. But so, if that's the case, then you start asking these questions, and the difficulty is that the obligation is on you to figure out whether or not they're a resident of Canada. And once you get into that sort of situation where, well, they've got a bank account here and a car, but they live with their sister when they come to visit, it becomes a bit of more of a difficult question. And fundamentally, as I say in a later slide, the problem is that if you don't withhold that 15%, because the obligation is on you to withhold it, if you pay them and they leave the country, you have to fork out from your pocket that 15% to pay the government. So the obligation is on you to figure out whether or not they are a non-resident. And we've had situations where our clients have come to us a year later saying, we brought somebody in, did we do something wrong? I'm like, yeah, you did. And they had to dig into their pockets to pay the taxes to the CRA. So it's not a small question, and in fact, all of our treaties have discussions about what happens if there's somebody spends a tiger rules, basically spend more than equal amounts of time in various countries. So the question can be complicated, and certainly when it gets that complicated, you'll need to consult with a professional about what is the best way to go. But there are clues. If somebody says to you, "Oh, I'm really a resident of Canada," you don't have to take off the 15%, but just send a check care of a post office box in Colombia. You can ask a few questions. If they say, "Listen, you know what? I'm a resident of Canada, but I prefer to be paid in Polish zlotys or something," clue. And other things, there's a foreign address on the purchase order or something like that. And if there's any doubt, the CRA's position is you withhold. Now, of course, the difficulty is if you've already signed a contract with somebody saying we're going to pay you $10,000 to come in and be our guest speaker, and you give them a check for $8,500, then they're going to have a big problem with that, particularly if they've met payment in advance and won't do anything until that 15% question is resolved. Oh, yes.
Question?
Sure.
We just had a guest from Asia. We didn't pay him since come visit us. We had some important meetings and some other meetings, but we were the ones that wrote the letter so that he could get his visa. So he was responsible for it. So we did give the person some money to help them for their airfare, but we didn't give those to help for their airfare. Is that still?
Actually, I get into that, but the answer, so the question was, what if you're reimbursing expenses? The answer there is no, you don't have to withhold 15% on the reimbursement of expenses. Yeah, and so I just wanted to get this out of the way because I know the question's going to arise and say, well, listen, we have Canadian missionaries that we send abroad. We get this question as well. We send Canadians from here abroad. Do we need to withhold? And the usual rules apply to that for an employee or an independent contractor, which is an entirely different set of discussions. But the bottom line is, if they're a Canadian resident and they're working and they're your employees, the same rules apply as to everyone else, regardless of where country they are. And what about the situation where this German engineer is helping you out, and they're in Germany and they do everything online and they send it back to you, and they never step foot in Canada on that engagement? Then no, you do not need to withhold. So maybe you need to have your guest speaker deliver his talk by Skype or something like that. So see if that works. How much do you withhold? So this is the interesting question. The basic rule is 15%. You withhold 15% of the amount of the fee, unless it's reduced by treaty between Canada and their country. Assuming they're a resident of Japan, you could go into the Canada-Japan tax treaty and see if the 15% is reduced. And of course, once you're talking about treaties, you have to consult a professional on that because that's tricky territory, and you really need somebody that can navigate that. And there are other ways in which you may be able to reduce the 15% amount, and we discussed that. So, what do you have to withhold from? And this goes back to the question, sir, about do you have to withhold for reimbursement of expenses? No, reimbursement of expenses are exempt. So up to that $10,000, the person can show, oh, my airfare is $1,000, and I needed a hotel room, and I needed meals, and I needed an assistant while I was here. All that comes off to $10,000. So you need to ask for copies of that, so you don't have to withhold 15%. Alternatively, what you can do, of course, is you pay for all those fees, and then you know exactly what they are, and then you just withhold 15% of the difference. What if they're paid an honorarium? So this happens sometimes. People say, well, it's not a fee, it's an honorarium, so therefore I don't have to withhold 15%. No, the answer is yes. You do have to withhold 15%. Don't get too cute about it because, the CRA, they don't like these finer points so much. They want to know if it's a fee, a commission, anything like that. We're talking about withholding. What if it's paid, the individual says, listen, I'm actually employed by my church, so just make your payment payable to my church, and the answer is then you do have to withhold. You still have to withhold. Alternatively, we say, listen, I'm prepared to forego my $150,000 speaking fee. Please make a donation to the food bank. If anyone has a guest speaker like that, please let me know. And the answer there is no, you don't have to withhold. It's being paid to a Canadian. If it goes to a Canadian, their responsibility would be to pay the tax that consequence that is. But if it's going to a charity, it's a charity. In what circumstances do we deal with a reduction in that 15% amount? One of them is the undue hardship waiver, which we'll discuss. The other one is a treaty waiver, and they can either waive the full 15% or any part of that 15%. So we'll talk about that. Oh, and this picture I just put in because, frankly, I was running out of graphics, and you think of a graphic for a week, so it wasn't going to happen. And the baby's coming. So there we go. So the undue hardship is pretty typical. In fact, the same rules apply in Canada. Just to use an example that's not relevant to the presentation, but in cases oftentimes where somebody says, "Listen, I have a large deductible expense. At the end of the year, I would have a very large refund as a result if you took the tax monthly from my paycheck. So I'll tell you what, CRA, give me the benefit of having this large deduction now. Just tell my employer they can reduce the amount of withholdings from month to month because you didn't give me all that money back at the end of the year. And CRA said has a process to do that. Say, okay, employer, take less money off this person's paycheck because at the end of the year, we're giving it back to them anyways. And so there's a process to do that. Same sort of rule applies in this context. If the person that's charging $10,000 for your speaker comes in and says, oh, you know what, I am spending $1,000 for a hotel room, I needed to rent an office to do some work on your project while I was here, I needed an assistant to help out, photocopies, and actually $6,000 are expenses, and you don't have to take off that, but what they could in fact do is go to the CRA and say, listen, I have all these expenses, let's reduce the amount that you have to take off. They can do this. That's one way to do it. And the other way to do it is by way of what we call a treaty waiver. And this actually is far more complicated than I expected when I started going into it. But if the fee paid is less than $5,000, they can get a waiver from the CRA. If the person is here for less than 180 days, it's not a recurring engagement, they can go and apply for a partial waiver from the CRA as well in certain circumstances. And similarly, well, okay, they're recurring, they're in and out of the country, but it's less than 240 days, there's a process for that as well. The reason I'm not going into complete detail is because, I think I have a slide now. It is because, I mean, the circumstances get pretty specific, and, I think the situation, it depends on what circumstances you're facing. And the fundamental part of it is it's really actually the responsibility of the individual to go and apply for a treaty waiver. The individual or the individual's representative. Now, of course, it's difficult to expect a bigger country, a Kazaki expert on something to know what Canadian rules are on a particular item and apply for a treaty waiver. I think there is, in fact, in Canada, Kazakhstan, and tax treaties coming. And so, what happens? They come to you and they say, listen, can you do something about this 15% withholding? And the answer actually is, no. You need to go. We can help you. We can send you to somebody who knows something about this to make the application. But fundamentally, the CRA is not interested in applications from the employing organization. The application should come in from the individual or from the individual's representative in Canada. And in terms of timelines, there is a timeline to say when you should do this. No later than a month before the contractor begins performing services in Canada, which again can be a tall order if you are busy to the last minute negotiating with this individual about their engagement. So it can be complicated, and you need time to do this, but they usually act pretty quickly. That being said, this is a moving target. CRA, anybody that's had to change their objects lately or sent anything to the CRA knows that now we're at a sort of 16-month wait, but very well could be they say this takes 3 days, but who knows, it depends on what's going on at the time. And then you say, all right, what if I forgot? What do I do? Now, one thing you do is you consult your friendly local tax and charity law lawyers, which you see, here's some examples. So, more, sort of bouncing in. Let's see, Sylvie, and there's Alexandra, and Kara. So you could consult any of these wonderful people and they can help you. But another thing you can do is, probably what we would advise, is what's called a voluntary disclosure. Now, because most of you deal with non-taxable organizations, you're not often in the position of saying, uh-oh, I didn't pay my taxes, and what do I do? But there is an actual process, at least from your organizational perspective, perhaps in a personal capacity, and there is a process saying, I missed this, should have reported it, I didn't, I'm incurring penalties and interest, as there is if you don't hold on to that 15% committed to the government. What do I do to get out of penalties, what can I do to reduce the interest? And you can take advantage of what's called this voluntary disclosure program. And in my experience, the CRA is pretty forgiving when it comes to charities that want to come clean, miss something, are prepared to pay what is necessary and move on. So, you don't have to go back 15 years and figure out, did we do this last year, did we do this the year before, or we paid all this money. I would encourage you to consider it because it is an outstanding liability on your organization should the CRA ever come and do that sort of an audit. And keep in mind that even an audit on, let's say, from the Charities Directorate could reveal the situation, which would then be a referral to the other branch, which could come in, and so you have a sort of Damocles hanging over your head. But nevertheless, you should be able to sleep at night. In fact, the charity audits that I've seen, they often miss this themselves. So that's kind of good news, although they don't miss before issues, surprisingly. So what I would suggest is that if you do have this issue that a couple of years ago you brought somebody in, or have somebody coming in a month, or you have some for less than a month, and you're worried about this 15% rule, is give us a call, give any of these friendly local tax and charity lawyers a call, and they will be able to guide you through this situation or any other situation. So, are there any questions? Yes.
So I was wondering, this 15%, you talked about the waivers, people saying, I can get a waiver because I'm not going to be paying those taxes. Does that mean that anybody who pays that 50% has a mechanism to apply to CRA to get it back?
Yeah, so that's a very good point, right. So the question was, well, basically, can they get the 15% back in any other way? Non-residents that work in Canada are taxable in Canada on that work. So just like we have our income, and we take off our deductions, and we tax a percentage of the difference, same thing for them. So they actually should file a Canadian return to get back whatever money they are entitled to. And it would be based on the treaty and whatever expenses they have in Canada related to that engagement, etc. So yes, very good question. Yes, ma'am.
What's the difference, or is there a difference if you have a consultant who normally performs tasks or services for you outside of Canada, but then attends meetings and or conferences in Canada? Do you have to have a proportionate difference between?
Yeah. Is it related to that engagement?
Yeah.
Well, the answer is certainly there's an issue. Whether or not it's prorated, I think would be based partially on the agreement between the parties. So, for example, it's you said listen, we're going to pay you $100 an hour, and you can show that they spent 8 hours in Canada, and so that $800 is related to that specific portion of work. Then certainly it's easy to make that allocation. I think the bigger difficulty is we say, well, we're going to pay you $10,000 for this entire job, and then they only spend 5% of the time in Canada. Is the whole amount taxable? Do you have to withhold from the whole amount or from only a portion? It's a very good question. I believe you go back to the contract to see where things land, and I hesitate to give you an answer because frankly I don't know off the top of my head, but one of those things to look into, especially specific to the facts.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I know that from time to time when you bring somebody in across the border to be a presenter at a workshop, they can get flagged by border services because there's this whole concept of bringing in a foreign worker.
Yeah.
Will that highlight that person to CRA, but that CRA has to watch what happened with the payment to that person?
I think the answer is not yet. My understanding is that they aren't, Border Services is not sharing that information with CRA yet. I don't know if anybody has any, they are sharing that information. No, they're not. Okay, so I was right.
Okay.
They're not sharing that information yet, but things could change in the future, and then maybe we'll find out.
So a secondary question to that, what if your organization is not a registered charity? It's just a community group, and you bring in a foreign speaker and run a workshop for 3 days, you still have, and you don't have any employees, like, I'm talking about a totally voluntary group that has some money in the bank, and can pay for a workshop speaker when they're collecting fees back. do you have to worry about withholding at that point?
You definitely have to worry about it. In fact, I'd suggest you have to worry about it more. So the question was, you have an unincorporated group of volunteers, a little money in the bank, maybe everyone's contributed to bringing in an expert to discuss an issue. Do you have to worry about it? And the answer is that whereas when you have an incorporated entity that fails to do something, the obligation lies with the corporation and only sometimes with the directors. In this case, when it's unincorporated, the obligation actually is on the individuals. And so the CRA could come after the individuals personally for the amount of that withholding. So I would suggest, yeah, extra big reason to worry about it. Yes?
I thought that they need some kind of visa to come to Canada to start with. If they want to earn any $10 here, they need some kind of visa. They can't just come like that.
Well, I mean, I think it depends. First of all, it depends on what country you're talking about. And secondly, I mean, NAFTA countries have different rules, for example, than non-NAFTA countries, to the extent that NAFTA is still alive and well. But the other issue is if they're not necessarily employees, right? You're hiring somebody in a foreign country with a contract, they're an independent contractor, but they come here to do something, then I mean, I'm not an immigration lawyer, but the visa requirements are much different. And so it's not, they're not an employee and they charge and there you have it. Yes?
It's a reasonable question to ask somebody to convert their residency and their citizenship in this certain
Yes. Yeah, you should ask them to, it's your obligation. So, one more question and then I'll hand it over to Karen because I'm concerned that everybody should get out of here when you said you get out of here. But yes, the obligation is on you to ask them where they're resident and to ask them for confirmation.
What happens if you give a corporation outside the country? And it's a person come to speak to you, they built something in the corporation.
Right, so so that's a good question. Yeah. And again, I think it's deserving of specific review. It may be that, first of all, it's very obvious that corporations are resident. They're incorporated under the laws of Belize, they're a Belize corporation. I don't know the answer off the top of my head. I will say that the contracts may specify it's with this corporation. I want you to send Mr. Santos here to do this work. That may be relevant to the circumstances. But the fact that I don't know the answer should indicate that this is a complicated area that's very fact specific and requires review of the individual situation. Sorry, one more question.
What happens to the money after you've withheld it?
You send it to the CRA.
There's forms to fill out?
Yes, there are forms to fill out, and there's an entire International Tax Services office that is dedicated to the taxation of non-residents. So it's I'll tell you, everything, sending money to the CRA is easy. That to make sure, that happens. So why don't we cut it off there? Hand it over to my friend Karen, who is going to speak about an extremely important issue about running a effective annual general meeting. This is, as you'll see, a critical issue that you're probably already familiar with. So thank you very much.
In fact, I didn't mean to cut Adam off. I just wanted to share that increasingly, if you're bringing folks in my experience, they're getting stopped at the airport to explain themselves. And I've had phone calls from, clients where they said, my guy, my gal is stuck at the border at the airport, they won't let him in, I have to fill out this form, and I've been on the other end of a phone where we've spent like 2 hours going through a maze on the internet of how to register. It all works out in the end, but I do think it behooves you to spend some time looking into that very issue of, it's not a visa that's required, but there is other documentation that is required
and it just seems to be they're asking a few more questions, and it's not improbable that you might, have to figure it out while somebody's stuck at the airport, and you're expecting them to take the podium at 7 o'clock at night kind of thing. Okay, so that was a sharing, not intended to be a cutoff for Adam. And another remark was, for Sylvie, bylaws, may be boring, but they're only boring until they're not, right? And far better to be dealing with issues in your bylaws when they're boring. And that is truly, a lesson that certainly I've learned and I've tried to teach my clients after many years of practice, because they are totally boring when they sit in the drawer for years and years and years until there's a problem, and that's not the time to try and figure out with the rules what the rules are, particularly if the problem arises in the middle of your AGM, and that's my segue, right? And which, there we go. So you just have to do an AGM, right? If you're in a corporate organization, regardless of the jurisdiction, you probably have to have an AGM. And even now, if you're a statutory corporation, it used to be you didn't have to, or if you did, you didn't have to have them every year. But sooner rather than later, you all will have to. And if you're unincorporated, more often than not, those constitutions provide for an annual meeting of some kind. It's also an important thing to do. And I say, it's part of the democratic thought process. Not all charities or not-for-profits are necessarily democratic, but it is an important part of the process where your stakeholders, your shareholders, your members, what have you, do get to sit back and look at what occurred during the year. The really important thing is preparation. I've got 10 tips, and it's only when we get to 8 that we're in fact at the meeting, okay? So most of the work to be done to have a good AGM is done well in advance. So first off, just understand the rules, right? Understand your bylaws, understand what they require in terms of the conduct of the meeting, who you have to send notices to, what are the rules for voting, right? So you have to determine well in advance if you're going to have an electronic meeting, as was discussed at the end of Sylvie's presentations. If you're going to try an electronic meeting, then you have to have the board approve a policy with respect to the conduct of that meeting well in advance of the meeting. If it's going to be secret ballots is the issue. Oftentimes, you don't need to have a secret ballot until you need to have a secret ballot. Usually, there's an issue that comes up during the meeting and somebody says, no, I'm not satisfied with the show of hands, I want a ballot. And oftentimes at an AGM, that leaves folks sort of caught unawares. Well, much easier to, well in advance, just have a policy that says if somebody asks for a secret ballot, we will use this system or the other. And SurveyMonkey works sometimes. There are all kinds of electronic systems, or something as simply as we have a policy that so-and-so, perhaps the executive assistant to the CEO, undertakes to be a scrutineer. You email to the secretary what the vote is, and she undertakes to ensure that folks have voted and not voted twice, but not to disclose how they voted, right? So it can be a fairly simple process. The important thing is to think about it well in advance. Schedule early, right? There are limitations in the statutes. You generally have to have an annual meeting within 6 months of the year end, or within 15 months after the prior year's AGM. So you pretty much know well in advance when that AGM should take place. If it's a problem, right, so meeting the 6-month rule presents a problem because you'd like to have your AGM in conjunction with some other event. There are mechanisms, so you can either change your financial year, So that would mean that you could have a more regular schedule of AGMs to coincide with that event. Usually it's a conference of some kind. If it's for a one-off, you can get permission from Corporations Canada to delay your AGM if there's reason and there's a process. So schedule early, think about it, arrange your venue, and then make sure you diarize all of that. And you work backward from that date. So that's why you have to schedule it early. Most of your compliance obligations relate to that date. And so if you don't set that date down, you won't be able to ensure that you comply. Sit down and think about whether or not you have some strategic goals for that meeting. This is less to do with law and legal obligation, but you're having meetings. So sit back and think, can I use this meeting for other purposes that are important for the organization? It could be something as simple as, outreach, an opportunity to showcase the activities. There could be controversial potential changes that you want to sort of do a bit of a soft landing first, educate your membership, educate folks, have a town hall about it. So just sit back and think about whether or not you have some goals for that meeting that are outside the purely compliance-related type goals. Also, is there a controversy brewing? Sit back and think 3 months, 6 months in advance. Either it's an election, you know that there's division among your membership over a particular issue, right? So just think about whether or not there's maybe going to be some controversy. And is there some preparation that has to take place? Maybe you're going to have a communications plan because the issue that's going to the membership is sufficiently significant that you might get some media play. Set the agenda. So I put on this slide sort of the typical agenda for an AGM. You don't have to do the reports section, right? But it tends to be what the agenda is. The order can somewhat vary, but that is the typical agenda that you'll see. But you might want to add some other things, right? So that was the typical standard business that needs to be done in an AGM agenda. But you might want to have a speaker. Also, you might want to have a script, right? Depends on who the chair is and how familiar they are with conducting an AGM. But more and more I see my clients prepare, in fact, a really quite detailed and specific script where they change the players and script out key messages that they want to deliver between the more mundane businesses of the meeting. Don't read the script, or for that matter, the reports. That's one sure way to see the eyes gloss over and have people check out, which would defeat the strategic goals that you would have set for that meeting, right? So it's a good thing to have the script, but of course, make sure folks know not to read from it. Preparing financial statements takes time, and that process has become increasingly, shall I say, squished because of the changes to the Canada Not-for-Profit Corporations Act in particular, the new changes to the Ontario statute, if and when they come in force, will be likewise. You have to put before the members 21 days in advance approved financial statements, right? And I'm seeing a lot of clients that go, oh, no, we just have the board meeting, they approve, and then they take off their director hat, put their member hat on, and then members receive those approved financial statements. Well, that's actually not what the Act requires, right? The board's supposed to approve them at least 21 days in advance because you're supposed to send out those financial statements to the members 21 days in advance. And it's not just the members that those financial statements go to. They're supposed to also go to Corporations Canada if it's a soliciting corporation. Most charities are soliciting corporations. So it's not something that you can just get the members to waive receipt of the financial statements less than 21 days in advance. You're actually failing to comply with the statutory obligation which is to file them with Corporations Canada 21 days in advance. Now, I won't ask for show of hands. I kind of can guess what the answer is. I am pretty darn certain that there may only be one or two who have ever, in fact, filed those statements 21 days in advance of the AGM now that these new rules have come into force, but I can't tell you not to, right? So just remember they do take time, and it's important to really plan accordingly. I think the financial statements get sort of sometimes dismissed as an important part of the AGM process, but in fact they are the critical piece. The way that corporate law works is at the AGM you present those financial statements to the members, and the members decide how do they think you performed, and are they going to renew the terms or elect different directors. That's, in a nutshell, all really that is to be accomplished in an annual general meeting, and so financial statements are essential. Think about also then about other special business. You've got provisions in your bylaws that distinguish special business from other things, and that's because there are special disclosure rules when you're going to consider special business at an AGM. Special business is really anything other than consideration of the financial statements and elections and appointing the auditor. So if you're going to do anything outside the normal, then it's probably considered special business. And if it's special business, the voting at the meeting is going to be different. It's 2/3, a majority in most cases. You may have other provisions in your bylaw. But you also have to, in your notice, include the content of that special business so that your members are aware that this is on the agenda. So you have to consider, once again, well in advance, whether or not you're going to put on the agenda the AGM special business. Finally now, we're at, in fact, preparing the notice of meeting, right? So we're at like step 7, and there's no particular order to these steps at this point, but we're only just now, right, at the point where you're in a position to prepare the notice of meeting. And there are strict rules with respect to the notice of meeting, to whom you send it out, and how you send it out. There's increasing flexibility. It can be done by email, by mail, and you can look at your bylaws and make sure that you have the right kind of flexibility to send that notice of meeting out. It's also your opportunity to decide if you're going to invite some others. Right? So do you want to send it to stakeholders, local politicians maybe, those sorts of things. And it's where you can use this as an opportunity to perhaps achieve some of your other strategic goals for the meeting. We're finally at the meeting. Get there early, right? Jen, our organizer for today, you know, she was cracking that whip, making sure that we all showed up well in advance, because there's a whole process to getting folks settled and, thank you, settled and ready, and do they have the right badges, and do they have the right voting card? They show up and you don't know if they're a member, and are they on the list, right? So it's really important to get there early, and if they arrive before you, then they're annoyed, and that's not the way you start a meeting, right? So get there early. Really the big issue with an AGM, and where most often potential problems can arise, and we discussed it a little bit earlier with Sylvie, is actually the election, right? Most of the business at an annual meeting is fairly business-like, by rote. Folks may have some questions about the financial statements. But where it can get dicey is with respect to the conduct of the election. Particularly now with the new Canada Not-for-Profit Corporations Act, where members have the right to nominate from the floor. So you can do all of your work. Hopefully the work preparing for the election occurred well in advance, and you've got a nominations process, perhaps a governance committee. and they've all done their work. But when you get to the AGM, there is this possibility of nominations from the floor. And so it's really important that you sort of plan for that potential surprise. Now, how do you plan for that potential surprise? There are really complex provisions you can put in your bylaw that sort of ensure that somebody who intends to nominate from the floor can only nominate from the floor if they tell you 60 days in advance. I have to say they add a page and a half to your bylaw and may not be the right solution, but there is a technical way to plan for nominations from the floor. I think the more practical, prudent way is to just have a proper nominations process where you call for nominations. People have to sort of, I explained to one of my clients, members are often like sheep. If you give them a process, they will follow the process, right? So if you have a nominations process, they will tend to follow it, and so you will get wind of any movement to nominate from the floor folks who may not be the people that the governance committee or the nominating committee would prefer to have put forward. And then these entities are political entities, and off go the chair and other folks to try and manage the risk, through softer channels. If it's going to happen in any event, then you should just prepare for it. So if somebody nominates from the floor, how are you going to handle it? Oftentimes, the chair will give them an opportunity to speak, for 5 minutes, give the other candidate an opportunity to speak. Then you are more than likely going to have to deal with ballots of some form. And, let's hope it doesn't happen. My point here is just prepare and think about it. Because once you've thought it through, you brainstorm the worst case scenario and how are we going to handle it, you document it in a policy, put it in a book, you have a little box beside the chair of the executive assistant to the person organizing the meeting, and if it happens, they open the box and out comes the ballots and out comes the process and you can manage it. The usual flow, would be you present the nominees. They may or may not have to speak. I think the trend now is more to present biographies and written material, and that's the end of it. In fact, if there's a slate, you can have just one vote on the single slate. Once again, there's all kinds of processes in conducting the vote. One of the issues that I've seen come up is some of my clients have adopted Robert's Rules of Order, and the issue that's arisen has more to do with, do you in fact have to call for nominations? You now know that if it's a federal corporation and eventually an Ontario corporation, members have the right to nominate from the floor. One thing to discuss is, are we actually going to call for nominations? Because that's kind of telling members they can nominate from the floor. And I have to say my advice has been, they have the bylaws, they can read them for themselves. The problem arises, however, if you adopted Robert's Rules, because Robert's Rules require you to call for nominations and call for nominations 3 times. So that might run the risk that somebody will go, oh, heck, I'll put up my hand, right? And it's just one of the downsides, perhaps, of picking specific rules like that. So quickly moving on. These are separate class votes. If you've got bylaws that have separate class votes, you have to think about how you call for those votes. A question I often get asked is, so fine, we've had to go off and deal with ballots. Can we nonetheless, while somebody's counting, just get the meeting done? And you can, right? You can continue on with the business of the meeting, and then once the counting process has ended, you pause wherever you're at and come back and announce the results. You can adjourn the meeting. If you get to the end of the meeting and the results still aren't back, you can adjourn. You can't adjourn permanently. The meeting has to be reconvened so you can announce the results. No hard and fast rules, right, in terms of conducting the election. I tell my clients, you know, the most important thing is fairness, right? So you might not like it that somebody has a nomination to the floor and they're being difficult, but you know, they're deserving of the respect of the room, and if you deal with it fairly, give them an opportunity to say their piece and why they should be elected, more often than not, you'll get the respect of the room, which is one of the most important things when you're running an AGM, is to ensure that you have the respect of the room in the conduct of the affairs of the meeting. And then we're finally at the meeting adjournment. So, you know, you're done. There's all kinds of compliance obligations to meet once you are done, and I thought that for the purposes of this morning, I'd leave it at we're adjourned, and if you've got any questions about that, I'd be more than happy to take them. So, anybody with any questions? You don't file them with CRA, you would file them with Corporations Canada, but only if you're a soliciting corporation. Okay, so if you're a trade association, professional association, you may or may not have to, because the rules with respect to are you a soliciting or non-soliciting largely distinguish between organizations that receive public funding, charitable donations, government grants. If you're not soliciting, meaning you're non-soliciting, then you don't have to file financial statements with Corporations Canada. I don't know that many do, to be quite honest, but the obligation's there in the statute. Any other questions? Yeah?
At the meeting, items not on the agenda, how would you handle that? Items have to be on the agenda to be discussed.
Right. So the question was about what about items not on the agenda, and I'm not sure, but you may be alluding to the member who comes to the meeting and wants a discussion and even potentially a vote, right? If it's a federal corporation under the Canada Not-for-Profit Corporations Act, there are provisions related to member proposals, and that's how you put it on the agenda. And my recommendation is always, you can only raise things at an AGM that are not on the agenda by going through the member proposal provisions. It's much preferable, if you'd like to have an open discussion with the members, to close your annual meeting and then begin a town hall, right? So you get through the business, you're now finished your annual meeting, and if you really want to have an open discussion, exchange of ideas, you know, folks can talk about what they would like to see happen with your organization. If you do it in the context of a town hall, it's much clearer that these aren't things that are specifically on the agenda for a vote that would in somehow way be binding on the corporation. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
You know, it's questions about items on the agenda. You know, you should be entertaining within reason, but members that want to stand up and, you know, make a proposal, make a suggestion, good chairs know when to sort of allow a little bit of discussion, but then you really want to keep control by saying, listen, it's only an item that in fact can be voted on if you go through a member proposal. And it's not an anti-democratic thing at all. I tend to like to explain that the rules are there so that other members know that that discussion is going to take place. If you don't go through the member proposal rules, it doesn't go on the notice of meeting. So there may be a lot of people who care about that issue, but stayed home because it wasn't on the agenda, right? And I find that you can sort of finesse handling those kinds of issues if you explain those rules in that way. Any other questions? Yeah?
A question about the planning, like budgetary planning for the next year, or some of the more forward-looking things. Do those have to be in the AGM, or should those be treated separately?
If they're changes that are going to impact the purposes of the organization, the bylaws, absolutely, they have to be at the AGM. If it's more, strategic priorities, you present them at the AGM. You might want to do, my feeling is the more education, the more town halls you do well in advance where people can, learn and discuss, the better. And you don't do it at the AGM, okay? That's my preference, is you socialize your membership and you educate your membership with respect to those kinds of changes well in advance. And you don't then get to the AGM where you have a room that isn't understanding or isn't properly prepared to handle the, in fact, legally binding decisions related to that change. That's my own view. And certainly, particularly with respect to the continuance. So a lot of corporations that had to switch from the old federal statute to the new federal statute used that opportunity to make fairly substantial structural changes. The few that tried to do it without a fairly robust communications plan well in advance, they got wasted. They presented these lovely plans and the members just didn't buy it. And the ones that spent time socializing the plan and the changes had no problems. They hauled me off to AGMs to sit there in case problems arose, and inevitably I sat there and, no questions were asked. Any other questions? Yeah?
Just quickly, you when you have like a guest speaker or an awards, where does that fall in the official kind of AGM order? Does it matter, or do you get to even have it in the town hall, or?
My own view is it's better with either at the beginning or at the end. Once folks get into the business part, then it's nice to get the business done, and they then get confused, So sometimes it's really nice to have the keynote at the beginning because it sets the tone. But then if you run the risk of losing people, and then you don't have quorum for the business. But it's not wise to put it sort of in the middle. Right. Any other questions? Well, thank you. I'll turn it over to Adam, but before he takes the podium, I just wanted, personally to take the time to thank you for coming. I hope you learned a little and enjoyed some breakfast, and maybe we'll do this again sometime soon. And if you've actually got any suggestions in terms of topics, we've got a lot of bench strength here, and we're more than happy to take on some of those topics and present them in forums such as this. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Karen. Everybody should be having an AGM, any incorporated entity should be having an AGM, and I think it goes without saying that anybody that should be having an AGM should be doing it properly. So if you have any questions about AGMs or about bylaws or about tax matters, as Karen mentioned, we have quite a bit of bench strength. If you've been dealing with Sylvie for many years, and she's equally capable of handling tax questions as I am, and we always consult with each other. So feel free to call any of our people about your questions. With that being said, I did want to introduce the various people that we have here today in the office. One person who's not here is actually Arthur Drache. Drache afterwards, sir. For those of you that don't know Arthur, he was responsible for writing the original charity laws. He's been involved in arguing most of the important cases. He originally wrote most of the important books, and so he was really foundational in the development of charity law in this country. And we're very fortunate to have his expertise and his historical input. And for those of you that are wondering, Arthur made his name very early, and so people still ask me, is Arthur still working? Some people ask me if he's alive because he made his name so early. The answer is yes to both. He comes into the office. He is still writing two of the legal newsletters used in this country, and we still have access to his expertise. So, aside from him, we have here in the room today, you've met Sylvie and you've met Karen. We have Aaron Carrier, who is with our administrative team, and then we have Alexandra Sanadakis, who's been, many of you have dealt with. She's been in practice now for about 3 years, right? About 3 years. And we have Sharon McNabb, who many of you also dealt with, as she is part of our administrative team and also deals with a lot of our corporate bylaw, or corporate minute updates and annual general meeting resolutions and whatnot. We have next to her is Deep Semby, who is articling with our firm, so that you know. And then in the back there we have Kara Johnson, and Kara has been with us now for a few months, about 5-6 months. We're very lucky to have her. And in the back we have Jen Taylor. Jen, why don't you stand up here? There, there's Jen. Jen was responsible for putting the event together today, and thank you to her for that, and thank you to everybody. One thing that Jen has asked me to remind you is, and I'm echoing Karen's comment, is that in your packages you have a survey questionnaire. If you don't have a pen, please borrow one from a friend or somebody at the table. It really would help us. This is the first time we've done this, and we're all friends here. We can take any criticism, constructive criticism you may have. So please do take the time to fill it in. It would indeed be very helpful to us as we continue to plan these types of events. And kind of helpful to tell us, and kind of not helpful, please tell us why that was as well. Next to you, or some people as they came in, got a mug and a book. Please, obviously, feel free to take them back and use them, and think of us fondly when you use them. And we appreciate all of your attendance. If you have any questions, our team will be around for a little while to schmooze and chat and again answer any questions you may have. And I want to thank Sylvie and Karen for taking the time to put together the presentation. It was, I'm sure, illuminating for all of us. And thank you for all of you for attending today. We appreciate it, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you.